The cards have been dealt, and we are here to play. Famous words of Vladimir Putin. And as the world watches, two of its strongest leaders are at play. At the table, Russian President Putin not kidding around, as evidenced by pro-Russian separatists who most agree have blown a civilian plane from the sky. And at the table, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu not kidding around, as evidenced by as many as 50,000 Israeli boots on the ground to blow up the tunnels used by Hamas terrorists to store weapons and stage attacks. And on the sidelines, watching and dithering, our leader, Barack Obama. But Americans don't want a spectator. They want a leader who's also not kidding around. Americans want a president not afraid to get in the game, secure our future, and reassert himself on the world stage. In fact, it's what we're used to. It's in the DNA of American presidents.
I'm coming before you tonight about the Korean airline massacre, the attack by the Soviet Union against 269 innocent men, women, and children aboard an unarmed Korean passenger plane. This crime against humanity must never be forgotten, here or throughout the world.
But can the man who occupies the White House today even be that leader? As 5 of the world's worst crises are at play, they may seem geographically distant, but in truth, your security and freedom are in imminent danger. Number 1, Iraq. Sunni militant group ISIS has plundered and murdered their fellow countrymen. They've taken over parts of Iraq, Syria, and the border of Jordan. Their leader, another experienced player, has boasted that he'll see us in New York. 2, Syria. Civil war has taken the lives of well over 170,000 people as 16 different rebel groups join forces against Assad. 3, Ukraine. Pro-Russian separatists at war with the Ukraine government. 4, Israel and Hamas, a continuing fight by America's strongest ally in the Middle East. And 5, the United States southern border, where immigrants, admitted gangbangers, many without vaccinations, are infiltrating our border. Actually, when you think about it, we're in a hell of a mess. And Mr. President, you need to get your act together. Put on your big boy pants and get in the game with a coherent foreign policy. First, Iraq and Syria. We need a consistent foreign policy. Mr. President, do you even know whose side we're on? Get this one. In Syria, we support rebels fighting against Iran and Russia. And in Iraq, we're working with Iran and Russia against ISIS. Do you ever feel conflicted? Mr. President, you can't have it both ways. How do you know whether to shake someone's hand or throw a bomb at them? How do you know who to invite to lunch and who to invite to an ambush? And 3, Ukraine. Mr. President, you've got to stop with that ridiculous reset button.
I think we have an excellent opportunity to reset the relationship between the United States and Russia.
And the empty threats?
And indeed, the United States will stand with the international community in affirming that there will be costs for any military intervention in Ukraine.
Here's a thought. Sanctions against Putin must be so strong and so immediate and so certain that they bring him to his knees. It looks like the weaponry used to shoot down that civilian plane was given by Russia to the separatists, or that Russia at least trained them to use it. And here's another thought. Instead of leading from behind, try getting Europe behind you on this one. We run NATO. It's our 4-star generals. It's our money. It's our intel. You've got a chance now of Europe joining you because 10 countries have lost citizens on that plane that was shot down. Just do it. And 4, Israel. Hamas is a terror organization, pure and simple. The UN may legitimize it, but it is a terrorist organization initially funded by the Muslim Brotherhood. At least the Egyptians' new president, al-Sisi, another strong player, had the courage to throw them out. And we need to assist our ally, Israel, to finish them for once and for all. and stop with the pussyfooting around and help the one ally that we have in the Middle East. And finally, to our border. Stop throwing money that we don't have at problems. Where did you learn that anyway? You can't just send money to Honduras, and you can't send immigrants under the cover of darkness whose backgrounds we don't even know, many with gang tattoos, and whose health records we don't even have, all over our country. You need to ship them out now. And if you can't secure the border, militarize it. And take that fancy pen of yours that you're always bragging about and change the law so that we don't have to keep them here for 5 years while they continue to drain us with costs of education, medication, housing, lawyers, judges, advisors, and translators. Mr. President, it's time to be a real ally to those people we need for the alleged tranquility that your press person thinks you have bestowed on the world. Another delusional conclusion. It's time to step up on the world stage to do something Reaganesque. Yes, indeed, the cards have been dealt. And whether you like it or not, it's time to sit at the table and get in the game. If you would ante up and be the leader that America needs, then Americans will not only rally around the flag, not only put their differences aside, but they might actually cheer you on. And here's an example, in case you need it, of what a leader does.
This is not a role we sought. We preach no manifest destiny. But like Americans who began this country and brought forth this last best hope of mankind, history has asked much of the Americans of our own time. Much we have already given. Much more we must be prepared to give.
The only question, Mr. President, is you take your seat at the table. Can you rise to the occasion? Can you be the leader that America demands at this dangerous time in history? And remember one thing, your bluffing will never work in this high-stakes game. And that's my open. And now with the latest on the investigation of downed Malaysia airliner MH17, Steve Harrigan joins us in Kiev.
Judge, the international criticism continues to rise in the wake of this tragedy. Much of that criticism pointed directly at Russia. Ukraine's prime minister saying that experts from that nation, when they reached the crash site, were actually prevented from carrying out their analysis by Russian-backed rebels, that they were even threatened with kidnapping by some of the rebels. The Malaysian transport minister saying the Russians have failed to adequately secure